Welcome everyone to the post-game lobby. I'm Shax, joined by Ender, VODS, and SK's CrownShot. Well, we got a lot of insight into Origin's route so far in the summer split, and I'm really happy that we get to talk to you as well, CrownShot, because obviously it hasn't been going as well for SK Gaming as of late. So I'd like to know, what do you think the biggest challenges have been so far?
Well, I think all the other teams have improved quite a lot going into summer, and I think we stagnated quite a bit. Like, we're at the same level we were before, I would say, and the macro has gotten better and stuff, and we're just not up to par right now, I guess.
Something that guys have been talking about a lot is kind of the fact that, you know, Selfmade, Period, and everyone was a bit more proactive in the early game, it looked like, and just more aggressive. Is that also something that was like an active change, that you wanted to take it more slow, or what's going on?
I mean, for sure, we were much more active in spring, and we were struggling with just not doing much in a lot of games in summer, like last week specifically. We tried to be a bit more proactive this game, but still didn't go so well. But we're definitely working on it, yeah. Since I think it's really important to not be scared, and a lot of the new teams new teams like Rogue and Excel, who changed their rosters, are playing much less scared than before, so it shows.
Do you think part of not playing as scared is trying to get more comfortable champions? I know Selfmade likes to go for this Vi pick a lot. That seems like very unique to him. Do you think those types of champions help him in particular?
I mean, I think he's really good at finding opportunities that other players don't, or at seeing players that other people don't, and champions like Vi are good at also punishing enemies' mistakes, I would say. So I think it fits him well, yeah.
As for this game, you and Dreams were trying your absolute hardest in the later parts to kind of bring it back. Yeah, were you surprised at how good OG was today? Because they'd also been kind of up and down.
Well, I think we also misplayed a bit, and they kind of... they had a draft with which, if they snowball, it's kind of hard to play side lane for us on both sides. And Sivir can always wave clear mid. So we are gonna slowly lose. So we were forced to look for opportunities, but yeah, I think they played pretty well today.
I think it was a rough game for you guys to win as well. They bounced back with a win, and the player of the game, the Kia player of the game, was NukeDuck. 82% of the votes. I swear, whenever he wins it, he has some astronomical number. And I don't love Azir and Corki as being so dominant in the meta, but if everyone plays Corki like NukeDuck, I mean, then I'm
if everyone can have 10 kills on Corki, that all of a sudden becomes a much more exciting champion.
Yeah, that is indeed cool. OG picking up a win. So let's take a look at the league standings, because things are getting spicy. G2 are now the top team, followed by Splyce and Fnatic. It's going to come up in just a second, who are now tied for second. Origin, even though it was kind of up and down, yeah, they're still doing quite well. And Rogue is right now in a playoff position. VODS, what do you make of this?
So the split has gone mostly as I expected, outside of the Rogue surprise into the top 6. I also expected a little more from SK, as CrownShot talked a little bit about. I do think it's fair to say that especially the top teams seem to have leveled up a lot more from what we saw in spring to summer. But I am surprised by recent performances of Fnatic. I was not expecting them to... I was expecting their next loss to be up against the likes of G2. So the fact that they've lost the game now to both Splyce and Rogue, I think that says more about Fnatic than it necessarily does about the other teams, that either teams are starting to figure them out, or... something seems to be going on with Fnatic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's teams figuring them out as much as it was Brox and Hillsing just running it down versus Splyce. And then today, obviously, with the roster changes, that's going to be difficult to try and readjust yourself. But even today, I thought we were still seeing very, uncharacteristic misplays from this team. It doesn't feel like these other teams are, actually, outthinking them or doing much of anything. It's just Fnatic are just playing not good League of Legends.
Yeah, what do you think about Fnatic as of recent?
I think people figured them out a bit, yeah, since their style is kind of, predictable. Also, they have clear weaknesses and stuff, but obviously they have reasons to field the roster that they fielded, right? But I still think it's better to play Nemesis mid and Reckless ADC, right?
What do you think the reasons are?
I really can't say, right, because I don't really know, but I guess it's just maybe some misunderstandings on how to play the game, or I'm not really sure. It happened last year, I guess. Was kind of different, but I'm not
See,
sure.
because
Yeah.
like we're in the same boat where
hard.
we don't really know, and
Yeah.
we're also basing it off of last year where there seemed to be like misalignments in the team.
I also think like
and-
it's hard because okay, there's a world in which you say this doesn't really matter, right? But I'm just thinking of what if it comes to the playoff race and they fall outside of the top two and we trace it back here. But on the other hand, I don't want to overblow something that, for all we know, might be Reckless wasn't feeling well or they wanted to try this or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we compare it to last year, but
Yeah.
it's two very different situations. Last year, it was multiple consecutive weeks that Reckless was out. There's very clear messaging around it. This week, the wording was Reckless is benched for one game. Like, that to me does not say we're bringing a new strategy or anything like that. Maybe needed time off, maybe it was something else, but ultimately, like, this is not a thing that I think, in terms of gameplay, should worry Fnatic fans. Whether or not there's more stuff going on,
Fair.
that remains to be seen.
Sorry to cut you off, Edius.
No, I think he sums it up nicely.
All right, perfect. Crown Shot, obviously we're looking at SK Gaming to get back into playoffs. You've got that added pressure now that it happened in spring, right?
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that? And what are your prospects for making it to playoffs?
I mean, the first prospect is actually breaking the losing streak and actually getting some wins. But I mean, the split is still not over yet, right? There's a lot of games left. It's only halfway, and we just have to start winning and start being confident on stage. Since I would say this is our biggest problem right now. We're just like hesitating too much and not sure what to do, not sure how to respond. Feels like the enemy is always making the first move. So this is for sure a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a similar position last split, though, too, right? Where your end of split, you kind of, I'm not going to call it a miracle run, but you were able to actually, towards the second half, pick up some pretty significant wins that allowed you to just slide into playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, last split we kind of won against G2 when we shouldn't have.
Oh, yeah, I remember, yeah.
I mean, and the difference is that, I mean, we can still do it this split, right? But G2 looks pretty good. And also last split we were also losing to teams like Excel, which we can't really afford this split, even though we already lost once, right? But like every win matters, and if we keep like dropping games against teams like Vitality and Excel, we obviously don't deserve playoffs, right? So it's like it's all up to us in the end. Like if we just don't win enough, then it's our fault, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like to hear you say, okay, you know, we just have to be more confident on the Rift. You did it once, you can definitely do it again, so we'll be tracking that throughout the day. We also asked you guys at home for your takeaways after the first round robin, and let's check out some of the questions that you guys sent in. First up is from @Resolve. Are the current standings somewhat indicative of where the teams will finish in the regular season? They're going to come up again in just a second. Guys, the floor is yours.
I mean, largely, I would say yes to a certain extent. I think like Origin is the one that I could see bumping up 1 or 2 slots in my mind. Obviously, their play is not at that level right now, but if we look at their history from the spring split, that is something that we could see. And then the biggest question mark for me is going to be the 6th spot, right? Because right now I believe Rogue are seated in that currently.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of wiggle room, I feel like, for like all these teams sort of tied around the 7th place spot.
I think Origin have another shot of getting second again.
Oh.
Like
Discounting. So pre-playoffs? I mean, going into
pre-playoffs.
playoffs, or
Sorry,
at the
I'm
end?
thinking like end of split.
No,
right?
Yeah, me too.
Right, sorry. Like by the end of playoffs, I could very easily see like the standings that we currently have being the standings by the end of the regular season. I think I'm not expecting SL to make a miracle run. I don't think Misfits will turn it around. I have little faith in Vitality. I could see a world in which SK and Rogue are fighting for 6th place.
Yeah.
Given right now they're only a game apart, it depends on how much more of a ceiling Rogue has. But I think at the end of the regular season, I could very realistically seeing this. Yeah, this one.
What's up with, we always do this about Splice, but then always the bridesmaid, never the bride and all of that. But I mean, the way Splice has been playing as of recent, wouldn't you then give them that chance to play the final and end up second?
I mean, I think we give them the chance to, right?
Yeah.
I think right now, if you were to make me put money on it, I wouldn't put my
We don't
money
do that here, so
on
that's
Splice. But like it's like a very real possibility that I think Splice do end up going to the final.
I think Splice is good right now, very good right now. Yeah, they have a clear, they're pretty clean macro. Maybe sometimes too slow, but they actually always know what they're doing on the map, and their players are actually playing really well.
Do you think they're a potential finalist?
Yes,
Definitely so.
I would say so.
My biggest issue with Splice is that I feel like I've still seen the same issues from them all year, which is that while I fully agree with everyone in the sense that they're a good team, they have excellent players, especially I think Xerxes is one of the best junglers in the league. I still think that the mid-game decisions that they make in terms of where they send their players and how often they get caught out is a really big issue that against the likes of teams of the caliber of G2 will always punish
But is
them.
it only G2?
Like,
right now.
well, that's the ultimate debate. Like, right now, I think there's arguments to be made that Splice is the second best performing team in our league, right? There's lots to support that. But I cannot be convinced that come playoffs, when teams always level up and it's a best of 5, these issues have been consistent with Splice. And every time you get caught out, the chances for a team to come back are rise dramatically. And even last week, I feel like too many people are ignoring the fact that Fnatic nearly came back in that game because of these issues from Splice again. And today, Splice nearly threw a Baron for those same issues. So I'm like, I'm still hesitant to put Splice at the top of our league because the same things I feel keep occurring. And a large part of it, I think, is just complacency when they have a lead from some of their individuals. So that's my personal big gripe with Splice.
I like it. I like that you really kind of explained why you have that opinion from Splice, and I love the way they're playing right now, but I said time will have to tell, right? And I really hope they push through this time around. We are going to move on to our next tweet. It is from @SteelMason. Which players have overperformed and underperformed in the split so far? That's a contentious one. Who wants the hot potato first? Ender, I choose you.
Okay, so I'll pick a player that I was very critical of at the start of the split. I think Humanoid has performed very well after like his first week and a half of play, because first week, 2 weeks was very non-existent in the games. He was mostly in the side lane, very low kill position, that sort of stuff. But then all of a sudden his Azir looks absolutely fantastic. I think his Kiana performance against Fnatic was also very, very impressive.
He's had 2 good Akali games now.
Yeah.
He's had 2 good Akali games now too. Yeah,
It's like everything we talked about in spring as to what he should improve and like being a bit more proactive and aggressive. It's like he's doing a lot of those things. So it's the progression that's most impressive.
Right, and it's not even like he's going from we're not seeing him a lot in games to he's now holding his own weight. He's actually carrying this team in a lot of their games and putting up really impressive scorelines.
VODS or CrownShot, any overperformers or underperformers that you're willing to say?
I mean, I think Abadage overperformed, largely because of how, he was a low point last split, especially in the second half. He held, the most number of deaths of any player in spring. And now, when you look at how he's performing, the change is pretty dramatic. And you can say that, I think, for a lot of our EU rookie mids from last split coming into this.
Good to
I mean, but I would say Schalke is also playing better and playing better around him.
True.
You know, for example,
very true.
They just first picked Azir today, and they played plays vision well and played well around punishing Jizuke, playing aggressively with Rakan roaming to mid when he gets a tempo reset on bot, and then they just punish Jizuke. They make him I think he's playing well, but it's also Schalke.
The addition of Trick definitely helps.
Yeah,
right?
I would say so. I would say Trick is quite an important piece. Yeah.
Any
of the way they play.
underperformers?
Well, he mentioned one.
I was gonna say.
Just there.
Yep.
I think Jizuke has gone from our 3rd best mid laner to not that anymore. I've surprised. I had such high regard for him, especially after his performance at Worlds last year and the whole Vitality run last year. And it's been a lot harder to give Vitality the benefit of the doubt anymore, you know? And he's one of the bigger issues that we're seeing. It's such dramatic differences in his performance.
It's all the puzzle pieces, right? There are a couple of other players.
I mean, we saw Vitality last split when they were very successful towards the start of it. They were playing a very similar style to the draft they went for today, where it's very much about 1-3-1 and putting a lot of faith in their solo laners to try and carry. And Jizuke would step up on picks like the Rise. I think he even had a game of Echo last season, and he looked very good on these champions. And then you take today's game, where he's just constantly getting killed in the side lane, where he's not respecting the ability for the enemy team to collapse. And he's on a very slippery champion in Echo too. It's not like you don't have options to try and play this way. He's just absolutely getting punished.
I mean, I would say last year teams were just worse in EU also. This year teams got much better at punishing mistakes and just playing the map overall. So I don't think the situations that happened last split, when they backdoored Rogue when they were really behind, I don't think many teams will let that happen anymore. I think teams are just better at playing the map, since I guess they just learned from playing G2 and Fnatic. I mean, mainly G2, right? I think G2 just leveled up the whole of EU by like really a lot.
I agree.
Yeah, fantastic point. I do hope that, you know, everyone can catch up and give us a good race for playoffs in time. Another tweet we have is from Eric, VFL or the 7th? I can't see it. Why did Misfits fall apart that hard and end up 2-7 after the first round robin? So, is this also a case, well, first off, they replaced their entire team.
That was one of their losses.
Yeah, I was going to say 2-7. So let's say 2-6, right? Because I think it's fair to say that everyone else leveled up. But I think we've seen traces of this already in spring with Misfits. So is this the same or is this a different situation?
I think it's the same. I think the players just don't gel together. I mean, the old roster. I think their bot lane doesn't play that well together. Or like, I remember the game against us, right? They had like Elise and Zahra Khan and stuff like that, and they were just like not really doing much. Like they were playing Doran Shield against Tankench Ezreal, not pressuring, not taking Ocean Drake, not pressuring mid. Mid was like Syndra against Karma. Syndra wasn't getting pressured. Top lane were also like free farming Gnar into Jarvan. They just weren't really doing much, and then we just outscaled them. And I think they have this problem for a while now. They feels like they kind of have no clear game plan or how they want to play League, and right now it's really important to have an identity and a style that you always play for or that you can fall back on, since there's like a lot of ways to play League right now and a lot of different lanes to play for. You just have to kind of be clear in your identity, and I think they struggle with this.
So I'm going to be blunt and say that I think, in my opinion, Maxtor is one of the biggest reasons why the team failed, largely because I think that as CrownShot has been saying throughout this year, teams have leveled up their understanding of how to play League. And I think that jungle has become an even more important role than it ever has been in how teams utilize pressure. So, like, when we see mid laners going for kills, it's not because they're better than the opposition, it's because they have appropriate pressure elsewhere on the map that enables them to make these plays. And in order to gain pressure, your jungler has to understand what is going on, where he needs to be, and like the jungler holds way more responsibility, especially in the early game, than he probably ever has done, especially here in Europe. And it feels like that Maxwell has not been able to keep up with the other junglers that have only gotten better. And when you think about some of the top performers that we have in our league, right, like, the gap between him and them is so stark that I think it's been very difficult for Misfits to really challenge the likes of other junglers when Maxtor is in that team.
Yeah,
so
I don't disagree, but the only thing I would say against that is obviously you say the likes of our top teams, right? But a lot of them have insane lanes around them as well,
I mean,
and synergy that is much better. And I'm not taking everything away from it, but as CrownShot says, if nothing is working in your communication, how can you expect him to be good at it?
Yeah, it's like obviously it's the jungler job partly, but it's also on the like.
it's always a balance, right?
Like obviously, like if the laners are not saying much or like not being clear in what they want or what they need, it's hard for the jungler to just make like think of game plans on the spot, right? It's like it's both, like it's the responsibility of the jungler and the laners. So somebody has to step up on Misfits, right? I mean, not anymore since they're bench, but somebody should have and just said, you know, like, just play around me, draft for this lane, draft for to give advantages to me, play through me, you know. It feels like they never really had that. So that's what I would say was their problem,
Would
And
you
like,
say it's similar issues for you? I keep cutting you off.
No,
I'm
it's
so
all right.
sorry.
yeah, partly. Yeah.
Okay.
Please. We obviously don't have the inner workings and also how the communication worked in that team. And there's obviously a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So I'm making claims based on what I see, right? And in my opinion, jungle is one of the biggest factors, but there's also the fact that as a team at the beginning of the year, something that was discussed by like many people was, would all these different large personalities be able to work together and align on how to play? And it feels like that they've, as CrownShot was saying, they've never really aligned on how they want to play League of Legends, and so we've never really seen them play League throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, this was supposed to be a super team, right? You look at that roster, that was supposed to be top 2, top 3 in Europe easily. And now, like, along with the teamwork issues that are very apparent, I also just feel like all of these individual players are underperforming to what we would expect of them, right? Like Soaz in the top lane was having one of the worst splits of his entire career, I feel. Febvin was not doing anything special in mid lane. We already talked about Maxor. And the bottom lane was not as good as when it was Hansam and Mickey X last year. So this team just fell apart at basically every single point.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think Mickey X is a huge part of every bot lane, right?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Obviously, like, I mean, Hans was always known to have lane dominant like picks, preferring lane dominant picks. But like as you can see, like pretty much every team Mickey X is on, the bot lane is top 2 minimum. So
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he's a very big factor. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Mickey X is obviously the best support in Europe,
like,
right? But when we think about a name like Gorilla, you would expect to have him come into the roster, and maybe it's not as dominant in lane as Mickey X, but you'd think very smart player, been around the block, he should level up this team in terms of shot calling and macro.
Yeah, it's the super team
Curse.
syndrome.
KT, Kingzone,
Whatever
Alliance.
you want to say, whatever you want to say, it is a tricky thing, right? And a lot has to go right because it's often maybe even harder to make them gel than it would be another configuration. I hope we get a debrief at some point from another place. Soaz did put out a long tweet chain with some information.
The thing that ultimately surprises me is just from an individual talent perspective, I just expected them to perform better. You know, like, there used to be a time where you could just put 5 players on a team and like they might get exposed at some point, but just because you have 5 really good players, the team should do well. So the fact that they've performed this poorly throughout the year was probably one of the biggest surprises for me of Misfits, that their environment and poor teamwork put them on an individual level so much.
But I would also say that right now, I mean, of course, individual skill is important right now, but it's also really important to have a clear vision on how we want to play the game.
That's fair.
Since if you look at a lot of top teams, like even in Korea, there's teams like Sandbox and Damwon who are like rookie teams.
Yep.
With not like, you wouldn't say they have a lot of superstar players, but they just have a clear identity to play for every game, and they have like, you can see that they play together, right? If they go for a play, they're always on the same page, and I think this is like really important right now. Obviously, like it's really important to have good players that you can play for, but it will always like, in the end, it always comes down to how good you play as a team, right? So
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's what League is now.
Yeah, and the next tweet is very apt. Finally, from @Tompa2410, how hard would Rogue smash TSM?
Faster than G2 smash Team Liquid.
Does anyone want to give context so we don't think we're just like
So
being negative towards LCS?
I'm not actually entirely sure where
Where
it
it came
started,
from.
but my understanding is Origin beat TSM at Rift Rivals, right?
Yeah.
So after Rogue defeated Origin, people then made the correlation, well, if Rogue is greater than Origin, then Rogue is greater than TSM, right? So then, like, a lot of conversations started happening around it on Reddit via various coaches and all that whatnot.
Can you like pick one hot take that you liked from all of that discussion, or?
I mean, so I think TSM is performing really poorly. And I think people put too much weight in the names on that team compared to the teamwork that I think that they showcased.
I mean, I think NA is just bad besides Team Liquid, honestly. Like,
So,
I mean,
I wasn't going to say that.
I wouldn't.
Awkward
I'm not
laugh.
really in a position to say. I mean, you know, like it's kind of looks funny coming from somebody who's 7th place, but like if you watch NA, I think Team Liquid is the only team that you could say could actually contend with most EU teams because they actually have the best players and the best teamwork and like the clearest identity. And like besides them, if you look at the other top 2 teams, which I guess C9 and TSM, they have pretty clear flaws. And I think Rogue is just a better team overall than TSM. And also they play in a better region, so their practice is much better, the solo queue is much better, and like if you play against better teams, you're just forced to level up, right? Or
So let me ask you guys. I know this is difficult. Obviously, we just had the argument of G2 levels up the entire region and everyone has to improve. Why is Team Liquid? Why is that same thing not happening then in LCS?
So, like, my theory is that the thing about G2 is they've spent a long time kind of like refining the pieces, and now not only do they have a good team, they have a very strong infrastructure. And G2...
So does Team Liquid.
No, but I'm getting to the point,
Okay,
right?
sorry.
So, like, G2... they have very strong players, but there have been other orgs in Europe that have also just leveled up their understanding. And it feels like that teams, the top teams in Europe have shared and grown together. And like that has created these very strong teams that rather than just relying on your individual talent, now is based around how you play the map, how you utilize pressure, and that's trickled down from our top teams to the teams below them, right? What hasn't happened in North America is Team Liquid have a team that rivals them or contributes to their success or like helps them evolve as a team, which means that when you don't have two teams like improving at the same rate, the teams below you don't improve. So I think that because G2 is, I know on stage doesn't look like they're challenged, but I would like to think that there are players and teams and orgs that challenge the way in which G2 think about the game and how they execute the game and how they play the game. And because they are consistently challenged domestically, that allows this like skill and knowledge to be trickled down throughout our region, which you don't necessarily get in North
I would
America.
also add one thing really fast, that the way G2 win is much different from the way TL win games generally. Like, if you have bad laners against G2, you will get 10 minutes. If you play bad against TL, the games, like, there's a lot of games in NA where TL loses early. It was also in Spring, because I remember watching a bit. They would like lose early games against, I don't know which team, like CLG or whatever, and then slowly win from macro. But if you mess up once against G2, they will just take over the whole map. So they also force you to pick better lanes. Like, if you pick a bad match, a bot lane, like for example today against XL, and misplay it like they did, they will just take over your tower. It was the same against Rogue when G2 played. When they played also Sivir into something, to Alistar or something, they just take bot tower, swap top, take 2 plates, and then your Sivir is 3k up on enemy ADC, right? And TL, I would say TL just plays a bit slower, while G2 always has a high tempo, and then they never let you breathe, you know? Like the way they play is just super fast and punishing.
Okay, final thoughts on that, Ender?
I mean, I just think G2 is an insane team, right? And like you talk about the way they just smash you in lane, like that's the best kind of practice because it forces you at every single stage of the game to play to your absolute limits. And you know, maybe we don't see that from all the teams over in NA, but you look at teams like Fnatic, I'd say would be a great example of a team that can contest G2 in the early game. Fantastic in lane. Splyce as well. Xerxes has been performing so well in the jungle that you can see that our teams here in EU are just super, super fast and have learned from the best.
Yeah, I would actually love to keep talking about this, but I think we need to start wrapping it up because we have a show tomorrow. I don't want to keep CrownShot too long either. So let's take a look at the schedule for tomorrow. A lot of good stuff, including our match of the week. We talked about it at length already, these two teams. G2 versus Splyce. I could not be more hyped for this matchup because for all we've been talking about Splyce and we say they're so freaking good, but is it enough? That would prove it, you know. If they're able to beat G2 Esports, it definitely would. CrownShot, up versus Fnatic. Reckless is back. What do you think of the matchup tomorrow?
I mean, we have to play better if we want to beat them, but I mean, I don't think they're playing that well right now. I mean, it can still change, right, if they bring in Reckless. But I think it will be a close game, yeah. We can definitely make it close.
You're the kryptonite anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, not this split, but
It was just one game, okay?
I think the overall record is still 3-1 to SK.
3-1.
Anyone else have anything they're looking forward to tomorrow?
Unfortunately, I feel like tomorrow is quite one-sided in my opinion. There's potentially room for upset with XL, but I think...
Why do you say that?
Why do I say it's one-sided?
No, why do you say
Upset
that's
potential.
the upset potential?
Oh, because I think that what we saw today was an example of a bot lane that's willing to play aggressive, and while they did misplay it, I think that XL is always willing to get in your face and actually fight you. And one of my observations is that they'll like brute force early fights with all 5 of their players. And a team like Schalke that like to play a little bit more controlled in the early game, it could catch them off guard. I think it very much depends on how on-the-ball Trick is tomorrow and what he's expecting to come out from XL's early game.
Okie dokie. We'll see tomorrow, but at midnight for you guys, LCS Academy is starting with Golden Guardians versus Team Liquid. And after their last game, you can also catch the rebroadcast of the LEC. That'll do it for us. CrownShot, I know it's never easy to talk to us after a loss, but thank you so much.
no problem. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, you gave some great insight, as well as you guys, as always, Ender. And VODS.
You rock.
Doesn't he get a fist bump?
Thank you, my man.
That was all from us here tonight. Fist bumps for everyone. Thank you so much.
leaving you
And he's
hanging.
back here tomorrow.
He's leaving you.
That's gonna get clipped for sure.
Brutal!
Please, a replay for that. And, do I get one or is it? Oh, the burn! Thank you all, and see you tomorrow for more action in the LEC. See you then. Come here, dude.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Thank you, my man.